Long before The Lord of the Rings ever reached a page, Tolkien was already building another world. While Europe burned in the trenches of the First World War, a young soldier sat in mud and blood, dreaming of languages that no one spoke, of elves and light and songs. From those dreams came the Silmarillion. It isn't one story, it's five. Five ancient scrolls bound together after Tolkien's death by his son, Christopher Tolkien, in 1977. He pieced them from thousands of pages of notes, unfinished, scattered, sometimes contradictory, and gave them a single heartbeat. The book begins with Ainur, the music of creation. Then comes Valaquenta, the tale of the powers, the Valar and the Maiar. Next, Quenta Silmarillion, the great body of the text, wars of elves, pride, and loss. After that, Akalabaith, the rise and fall of Númenor, the Atlantis of men. And finally, of the Rings of Power and the Third Age, where our world begins. It's not a sequel, not a prequel. It's the mythology that everything else grows from. Without the Silmarillion, there is no Gandalf, no Shire, no ring. Every legend you know is only the shadow of this older light. Before there was light, there was sound. Before there was world, there was only a song. Tolkien begins at the edge of existence itself, with Eru Ilúvatar, the One, the Creator. From his thought came the Ainur, holy spirits vast and bright. And to them he spoke, "Sing." They sang, not with words but with power. Each voice was a fragment of the divine will, weaving melodies of light and motion. Together their music shaped the vision of a world, a living harmony echoing through the void. But among them was one who did not sing as the rest. His name was Melkor, the mightiest of all. And within him burned a fire that Ilúvatar had not given. He longed for independence, to create things of his own imagining. He grew restless, proud, jealous. In his heart, he thought, why must all be Ilúvatar's design? Why not mine? And in that thought, discord was born. His melody clashed against the harmony of the others. The music trembled, notes of beauty twisting into shadows. Some voices faltered, others grew louder, fighting to restore the theme. But Melkor's pride would not yield. The first war in creation was not fought with swords, but with sound. Ilúvatar watched in silence, and then, with calm beyond all time, he raised his hand. A new theme rose, deeper, stronger, flowing around the discord, turning it to beauty. Yet again, Melkor tried to drown it in noise and fury. And again, Ilúvatar wove his rebellion into something greater. Until at last, the Creator stood, and his voice became like thunder over the sea. He spoke a single word. Ea. Let it be. And what had been music became world. The Ainur looked upon their song made flesh, a globe of fire and water, vast and glowing in the void. Mountains rose like slow-breathing beasts. Oceans formed beneath storms of light. And Ilúvatar said, enter into it and be part of it. Many obeyed. They descended from the timeless halls into the newborn world, and its vastness became their home. These were the Valar, the powers of Arda. Each took up a part of creation: the sea, the sky, the earth, the winds. They shaped its lands, cooled its fires, and filled its silence with meaning. But Melkor came also. He looked upon Arda and desired it for himself. Where others built, he broke. Where they kindled light, he cast shadow. Mountains he tore down, seas he boiled, forests he burned. He sought to rule what he had not made. And though the Valar were mightier together, his will was endless, his malice tireless. So began the first strife within the world. Creation itself became the battlefield, a war of shaping and unmaking. At last the Valar withdrew across the western sea to a place beyond Melkor's reach. There they built a new land, Aman, the Undying Lands. And in its heart they planted 2 trees, silver and gold, whose light shone over all Valinor. Their radiance was soft and pure, a living memory of the music that had made the world. And for a time the earth rested. Yet Melkor's darkness did not sleep. He waited for the day when that light would burn brightest, so that he could steal it. Where the Valar walk beneath the 2 trees, where the first elves awaken beside the starlit waters, and where one among them, Feanor, will forge the jewels that will set the world on fire. In the land of Aman, far beyond the reach of shadow, the Valar built a realm of perfect light. There, in the heart of their world, stood the 2 trees, Telperion and Laurelin, one silver, one golden. Their light waxed and waned in gentle rhythm, silver fading as gold rose, gold dimming as silver bloomed again. The mingling of their glow bathed Valinor in living light, and the Valar called it the days of bliss. Under their branches stood mountains of white, seas as still as glass, and gardens that sang when the wind moved through them. And for a while, the Valar believed evil had passed away, that Melkor's rebellion had been tamed. But shadows never truly die. They wait. And in the far corners of Middle-earth, something else began to stir, a whisper of life that even the Valar had not foreseen. Far from Valinor's light, beneath the ancient stars, the elves awoke. The firstborn of Ilúvatar, children of the stars. They opened their eyes beside the waters of Cuiviénen and beheld their own reflections, the first mortal wonder. They spoke the first words. They sang the first songs. They saw the starlight and called it beautiful. When the Valar heard of their awakening, they were filled with joy and fear. Joy that the children had come. Fear that Melkor might find them first. So they waged war against him in the ancient lands, casting down his strongholds and binding him in chains. Melkor was brought captive to Valinor, humbled before the throne of Manwë, king of the Valar. And for a time, a long time, peace returned. The elves were invited westward to dwell with the Valar beneath the light of the trees. Many came, some remained behind. Those who journeyed were called the Eldar, and among them rose houses of great splendor, the Vanyar, the Noldor, and the Teleri. But none among them shone brighter than one, Ainur, son of Finwë, prince of the Noldor. Ainur was fire. His spirit burned with restless creation. His hands could shape what others only dreamed. He forged words and gems, crafted runes and wonders, but his greatest work was yet to come. He looked upon the two trees and desired to capture their light, not to possess it, but to preserve it, to hold within his hand the beauty that fades. So he wrought 3 jewels, flawless, living crystals that burned with inner flame, the Silmarils. Inside them shone the mingled light of the trees, unmarred, undying, so pure that even the Valar marveled at them. Varda, the queen of the stars, hallowed them so that no unclean hand could touch them without being burned. And in their glow, Ainur felt pride, not evil, not yet, but the pride of one who has created something too perfect to share. Melkor watched from the shadows. He had been released from his bonds, free once more, walking among the Valar with feigned humility. His words were soft, his eyes downcast, but in his heart burned the same hatred as before, and when he beheld the Silmarils, he desired them beyond all measure. They were the light he had destroyed, reborn in another's hands. He could not bear it. He began to whisper. To the Noldor he spoke of freedom, of strength, of hidden truths. He told them the Valar were jealous, that they had stolen Middle-earth from the elves, keeping them as prisoners in their shining land. Whispers became anger. Anger became division. And when he spoke to Ainur, his poison found root. Ainur's pride grew into suspicion. He accused his half-brother Fingolfin of treachery, drew his sword in the very halls of Tirion, and defied the will of the Valar. Exiled, he withdrew into his forge, guarding the Silmarils like a dragon hoards gold. No one was permitted to look upon them, not even his father. But Melkor's web was not yet finished. One night, when the mingling of the trees filled Valinor with golden and silver dawn, he struck. With him came a creature of pure hunger and darkness, Ungoliant, the spider of the void. Together they crept into Valinor and struck at its heart. Ungoliant drank the light of the 2 trees until they were dead and black. Their sap ran like blood into the earth. The land fell into shadow. Then Melkor seized the Silmarils and fled. But even in his grasp, they burned his hands, for the light of the holy could never belong to the unclean. Still he held them, though his flesh smoked and his cry filled the heavens. Ainur awoke to the darkness and knew at once what had been done. The light of creation was gone, and with it, all joy in Valinor. Grief turned to rage. In the firelight of the ruined trees, Ainur spoke words that would curse all his kin. He named Melkor Morgoth Bauglir, the black enemy of the world, and before his sons he swore a terrible oath that none, not Valar, not elf, not man, would keep the Silmarils from their hands. They would pursue Morgoth to the ends of the world and take back what was theirs, whatever the cost. The Valar pleaded for patience. They begged him to stay, to let justice be done. But pride is louder than reason, and grief burns hotter than wisdom. Ainur turned from the Valar and gathered his people, the Noldor, the most skilled, the most proud. And in the dark of night, their ships left the shores of Valinor, crimson with stolen fire. Before dawn broke, blood was spilled, the first kinslaying. Elves killing elves for ships, for vengeance, for pride. The light of Valinor faded behind them, and across the sea they went, chasing the shadow that had stolen their light. Behind them, the Valar wept. Ahead, Morgoth fled into the north, his crown now burning with 3 stolen stars. From that moment, the world changed. The peace of the Blessed Realm was broken. The doom of the Noldor had begun, and the wars for the Silmarils, wars that would scar the land and doom heroes yet unborn, had only just begun. In the next part, we follow the Noldor into Middle-earth, to the dark fortresses of Morgoth, the rise of kingdoms under the stars, and the heroes and tragedies that shaped the First Age, where light and shadow would clash until even hope itself was broken. When the Noldor left Valinor, the sea was black and still. Behind them lay the light of the 2 trees, gone forever. Before them, the shores of Middle-earth waited in silence, cold and endless under the stars. Their ships touched the sand of the far north, and their exiled king, Ainur, stepped upon the land he had once sworn to reclaim. His heart burned with vengeance. And far away, in the frozen fortress of Angband, Morgoth waited, the stolen Silmarils burning upon his iron crown. The First Age had begun. The Noldor built great kingdoms beneath the stars, realms of strength and beauty. Fingolfin, proud and noble, raised his halls in Hithlum, beside the mountains of shadow. Feanor's sons spread across the land, building citadels of stone and fire. And for a time, there was hope, a fragile balance between defiance and despair. But Morgoth was patient. He sent forth legions of orcs, twisted in his dungeons from captured elves, and rivers of flame poured from Angband. The Noldor fought bravely, their swords shining with starlight, but against his endless darkness they could not prevail. Still, they did not yield. They built towers, forged alliances, and raised banners that glowed against the night. Even the sun and the moon, born from the last light of the dead trees, rose into the sky, and for the first time, Middle-earth saw day. Morgoth hated the light of the sun, for it reminded him of what he had lost. He retreated into his fortress, and for centuries the world endured a tense, uneasy peace. But peace in the shadow of Angband is never more than a breath. From that age came the great tales of heroism and sorrow, stories whispered through every age that followed. There was Fingolfin, the High King of the Noldor, who rode alone to the gates of Angband when all hope seemed lost. He called Morgoth forth to single combat. The Dark Lord came, vast, armored in black iron, his crown blazing with the 3 stolen jewels. And before the host of his own servants, Morgoth fought the proud Elf King. Fingolfin's sword struck 7 times, wounding even the first Dark Lord of the world, But in the end, he fell, crushed beneath the black hammer Grond, his body broken, yet his defiance eternal. Even Morgoth limped thereafter, wounded forever by the courage of one elf. Then came Beren and Luthien, the mortal man and the immortal maiden, a love so great it defied the will of the Valar themselves. Beren swore to steal a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown as the price of her hand, and with Luthien's song and courage, he did the impossible. They entered Angband in disguise, stood before the Dark Lord's throne, and wrested from his crown a single jewel of living light. But such love and bravery could not escape sorrow. Beren was slain, Luthien followed him into death, and yet, through grace and pity, they returned to life for a time, mortal and bound to the world. The Silmaril they carried brought both hope and doom, for the sons of Feanor pursued it even as it burned in the hand of another. The light of that jewel kindled hearts, but it also destroyed them. Every hand that grasped for it was marked by tragedy. Even the mightiest fell, kings, warriors, and dreamers, all undone by the same fire that had once burned in the trees of Valinor. Among those doomed was Turin Turambar, son of sorrow. His life was a chain of misfortunes forged by Morgoth's curse. Wherever he went, death followed. He fought dragons, slew friends by mistake, and at last, when truth was revealed and despair consumed him, he fell upon his own blade. Even his story, the most human of them all, was born from the shadow of that ancient oath. And then came Gondolin, the hidden city of white stone, built in secret by Turgon, Fingolfin's son. For hundreds of years it stood unseen, a dream of Valinor reborn under starlight. But Morgoth's spies found it at last. Fire and steel rained from the mountains, and Gondolin burned. Its towers fell, its people slain or scattered. Yet from its ashes escaped a few, and among them a child who would one day change everything. Arendil, son of Tuor and Idril, bearer of both elven and mortal blood, he grew to manhood in a world already half broken. Guided by the light of the Silmaril that Beren and Luthien had won, Arendil built a ship and sailed into the west, beyond the mortal seas, seeking the Valar. He begged them to forgive the Noldor, to take pity on the ruined lands of Middle-earth. And his plea was answered. The Valar rose in wrath. Their hosts crossed the sea, and the War of Wrath began, the greatest battle the world had ever seen. Morgoth's armies poured forth from Angband. Dragons filled the skies, and the earth itself broke beneath their fury. For years the war raged, until at last the powers of the West prevailed. Morgoth was captured and cast into the void, beyond the walls of the world. His iron crown was broken, and the Silmarils torn from it. But even in victory, sorrow remained. Two of Feanor's sons, Medros and Maglor, still bound by their father's terrible oath, stole the Silmarils again. Yet the jewels burned them, for their hands were stained by blood and betrayal. Maedhros threw himself into the fire. Maglor cast his into the sea, and the last light of the Silmarils was lost to the world, one in the earth, one in the sky, and one in the depths of the sea. So ended the First Age. The lands of Beleriand sank beneath the waves, broken by the fury of the Valar. The world was forever changed, and from its ruins would rise new kingdoms, new races, and new evils. The shadow of Morgoth was gone, but not his legacy. For in the dark corners of the world, his servant Sauron still remained, patient, watchful, and waiting for his time to come. In the next part, we leave behind the ruins of the First Age and sail into the Second to the golden island of Númenor, to pride and downfall, and to the forging of the rings of power, where the shadow of Morgoth will rise again through the hand of his most faithful servant. When the wars of the First Age ended, the seas swallowed the western lands. Beleriand was gone, broken and drowned beneath the waves. But from its ruin came mercy, for the Valar saw the courage of men who had fought against the shadow, and they granted them a reward. Far to the west, upon the great sea, they raised an island, Númenor, a land of green hills and silver shores, closer to Valinor than any mortal had ever dwelled. There, the Edain, the noble men of the West, built their kingdom. They became the Dunedain, the high men, wise, tall, long-lived, blessed with gifts of spirit and strength. Their capital, Armenelos, gleamed with white towers and golden domes, and in its heart stood the Meneltarma, the sacred mountain where no unclean word was ever spoken. For many centuries the Dunedain lived in peace. They sailed the seas, built great ships, and became masters of the world's oceans. They taught the lesser men of Middle-earth wisdom and craft, and the world prospered beneath their hand. Yet even among the blessed, pride takes root, and in the hearts of the Númenorians it began to grow, slowly, silently, like a shadow beneath the sun. They looked westward toward the shores of Aman, where the Valar dwelt in eternal bliss, and they envied them, for the Valar did not die. And though the men of Númenor lived long beyond other mortals, their days still ended in death. That truth they could not bear. In the beginning, their kings were humble. They accepted the gift of men, the mortal life that ends, so that new life may begin. But generation after generation, that wisdom faded. Their hearts turned from gratitude to longing, from longing to jealousy. And jealousy, in time, became defiance. The Valar forbade them to sail west, beyond sight of their island. For that way led not to mortal lands, but to the undying lands themselves, a realm no man could enter and remain mortal. But whispers spread among them that perhaps there was a way to conquer even death, that the ban was a lie, that the Valar kept immortality for themselves. It was then that Sauron returned. Once the lieutenant of Morgoth, now the Dark Lord of the Second Age. He had fled the ruin of Angband and built his power anew in Middle-earth. But when the might of Númenor reached his shores, he could not resist them. He surrendered willingly to the army of the West and was taken prisoner. A prisoner who soon became a counselor. In the courts of Númenor, Sauron's voice was honey and smoke. He spoke of death as a disease, of power as a cure, of gods that had deceived them. He built temples to the ancient darkness, and the hearts of men turned once more to shadow. Soon they worshipped Melkor as the true god, the giver of freedom. The smoke of sacrifice rose from the mountain of Meneltarma, and the light of Númenor dimmed. Only a few remained faithful. The elf friends, led by Amandil and his son Elendil. They watched in silence as their people fell deeper into madness, praying that the Valar would show mercy once more. But mercy cannot protect those who seek their own ruin. At last, Ar-Pharazôn, the last king of Númenor, consumed by pride and fear of death, gathered his vast fleet. He would no longer beg for immortality. He would take it. Under black banners and against all warnings, he sailed west. His armada covered the sea, a storm of gold and fire, to challenge the very gods. The Valar did not fight. They appealed to Ilúvatar himself. And the world was changed. The seas rose in fury. The land split. Númenor, the once blessed island, was swallowed by the abyss. Its towers sank into the deep. Its people vanished in the storm. Ar-Pharazôn and his soldiers were buried alive beneath the falling hills, trapped forever in timeless darkness. The world itself was bent, no longer flat, but curved, so that none could ever again sail straight to the undying lands. Only the elves could still find the hidden way, the straight road, beyond the reach of mortals. Yet not all perished. In secret, Elendil and his sons, Isildur and Anarion, fled eastward with the faithful, guided by the grace of the Valar. Their ships weathered the storm, carrying the White Tree, the heirlooms of Númenor, and the memory of its light. They reached the shores of Middle-earth, where they built two kingdoms, Arnor in the north and Gondor in the south. And there, beneath new stars, the line of kings continued. But Sauron did not die. His body was destroyed in the ruin of Númenor, yet his spirit escaped, a dark wind carried by the sea. He fled back to Middle-earth to rebuild, to scheme, and to prepare. For though Morgoth had been banished, his servant endured, and from the ashes of Númenor would rise the next shadow, the forging of the rings of power. In the next part, we enter the age of rings and deception, where Sauron walks among the elves, where kings and smiths are deceived by beauty and pride, and where one ring will bind them all. When the seas calmed and the ruins of Númenor sank beneath the waves, Middle-earth stood in silence once more. The world was changed. The elves lingered in their hidden realms, weary and diminished. The kingdoms of men, Arnor and Gondor, grew proud and strong, and in the deep shadows of the east, something ancient began to stir again. For Sauron had not perished. His body was gone, but his will endured, a shadow of fire and malice, and he remembered the craft of his master, Morgoth. He knew that domination could be achieved not only by armies, but by temptation, by gifts, So he clothed himself in fair form, calling himself Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. He came among the elves of Eregion, speaking wisdom and friendship. He taught them secret arts of forging and enchantment. And under his guidance, their greatest smith, Celebrimbor, began the work that would shape all ages to come. Together, they forged the rings of power. 9 for mortal men, 7 for the dwarf lords, and 3 for the elven kings. Each ring held immense beauty and strength, a fragment of the creative fire that once sang the world into being. But Sauron's hand was in all of them, and in secret, within the fires of Mount Doom, he forged another, a master ring, the one that would rule the rest. When he slipped it upon his finger, the elves heard his voice in their minds and understood the betrayal. They hid their 3 rings, Narya, Nenya, and Vilya, so that his shadow could not touch them. But for men and dwarves, it was already too late. The 9 who bore his rings became his slaves, their lives stretched beyond death, their bodies fading until nothing remained but will and shadow. They became the Nazgul, the ring wraiths, the servants of the One. And so darkness returned. Sauron built his tower in Mordor, and upon his black hand, the One Ring gleamed with fire. His armies of orcs and beasts swept across Middle-earth. The kingdoms of men faltered. The elves withdrew behind their forests and mountains. It seemed the shadow of Morgoth had risen anew, but in another form. Then came the last alliance. Elves and men united under Gil-galad and Elendil, the last hope of the free peoples. Together, they marched upon Mordor, besieging Sauron's fortress for 7 long years. In the end, Sauron himself came forth to fight. He slew both kings with his own hand, but as he triumphed, Isildur, son of Elendil, took up the broken sword of his father and struck. The blade cut the ring from Sauron's hand, and in that moment, the Dark Lord fell. His body perished, his spirit fled, and the shadow was scattered. The Second Age ended, but victory was incomplete. For Isildur, standing over his fallen enemy, looked upon the ring, small, plain, yet burning with strange light. He should have destroyed it, cast it into the fire from which it came. But he did not. He claimed it for himself, calling it a weregild for his father's death, and so the seed of evil was planted once more. The ring betrayed him as it would betray all. It slipped from his hand as he fled the Gladden fields, and the river took him. His body was found, but the ring was lost, hidden beneath the water, waiting. Centuries passed, kingdoms fell, elves dwindled, and the world forgot. Yet evil does not sleep. In dark places whispers remained of a shadow that could not die, of a will searching for its lost treasure. And at last, the ring was found again, by chance, by pity, by a creature whose name would echo through all ages to come. From that moment, the story of the Third Age began. The age of hobbits and wizards, of the Fellowship and the Ring-bearer, of the final war between light and darkness. But that tale is for another time. For everything that happens, every battle, every sorrow, every spark of hope is born from this. From the first note of the music, from the pride of Feanor, from the light that was stolen, and from the one hand that reached too far. The Silmarillion is not a story of beginnings alone. It is the heartbeat beneath every legend, the whisper in every shadow, the memory of what once was perfect and was lost. And though ages pass and empires fade, the song of creation still lingers, softly, endlessly, waiting to be heard again. Now tell me, which age of Tolkien's world lives closest to your heart? Do you love the quiet days of The Hobbit, the fellowship and war of The Lord of the Rings, or the mythic dawn of the Silmarillion itself? Write it in the comments below, because every age of Middle-earth, from the simplest to the most divine, tells us something about our own.